cereal is probably the worst food you can start the day with.
Parents have been trying to kill us this whole time.
A skinny person take their poop and give it in a capsule, basically, into a fat person, and they actually lose weight.
What? All right, welcome to the Digital Social Hour. I'm your host, Sean Kelly. I'm here with my co-host, Wayne Lewis.
What up, what up?
And our guest today, Robert Yang.
Robert.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
So we're just going to dive right into it.
We are.
Are Lucky Charms healthier than steak?
According to the food pyramid.
According to the food
To the food pyramid? Well, see, I am of the belief that steak should be part of your diet.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
For a lot of people. Obviously, quality does matter. I know quite a few people believe, it has to be plant-based or vegetarian on that side. It's interesting we're talking about it because I was just looking into that. And so oftentimes within the literature, they always refer to De Filippo et al. So basically it's a researcher and they talk about how plant-based diets are better for gut health via low fat and then vegetarian, that sort of diet. And then they compare it to, for example, the standard American diet,
Right.
Or another term is Western American
Who
diet.
actually made that up? That Lucky Charms is actually healthier.
The
than
food
steak?
pyramid, the government.
Like what? Even,
Well, I mean, that's the
like,
we can
what
get
was
into
that
that.
discussion? Like, hey, let's put this out.
I mean, cereal probably, I did a post on cereal too, but just to finish that part, they compare sort of apples to oranges in a way. So they talk about low fat vegetarian, but then they point to the standard American diet, which there's so many confounding factors. You know,
Right.
You have sugar, obviously you have processed foods.
Right.
You know, the meat that they include within the meat category is typically it's bacon, it's meats full of preservatives, nitrates, that sort of thing versus, okay, is it grass-fed? Is it organic eggs, free
Right.
range? And then obviously the fat sources are not very good. Typically it's categorized, fat, but it's fried fat, trans fats. So there's a lot of confounding factors where you can't really compare apples to apples.
Right. Yeah.
In that regards
I agree.
to whether, okay, this is just the diet for gut health.
Yeah.
And that's where I think meat can be part of a good diet for your overall gut health.
So it's not healthier.
No, it is.
No, it is
What?
healthier.
Lucky Charms
with
isn't
steaks.
healthier. Yeah.
Well, not Lucky Charms. I mean, if you look at, whenever I think about cereal, I did a post and I said it's probably the worst food you can start the day with
You called it junk.
because I call it junk.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
yeah.
you're eating something that has been so processed with heat temperature, but also high pressure. So it's technically, they call it an extrusion process. So that completely changes the molecular structure of the protein of the wheat or the corn or the rice, whatever the grain was.
Right.
And so it's nothing that we've seen or exposed our body to in nature in terms of that protein. So not only are you really causing the roller coaster effect of your blood sugar.
So our parents have been trying to kill us this whole time.
Well,
Without knowing.
without knowingly, they're lovingly trying to give you
The marketing on the cereals is brilliant.
Right, but the red boxes, Lucky Charm on
Yeah,
them.
but
it's like
creating
cool,
a cartoon character, I mean, we all
thrive
fell
off
for
of
that.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
good marketing.
Oh, yeah.
McDonald's too.
So how can people find out if they have gut health issues and what are some ways to improve your gut health?
So I would say standard blood work is one way to do that. So oftentimes a lot of people go for a monthly checkup and they might get a complete blood count. So basically that's looking at white blood cells, red blood cells. So oftentimes with white blood cells, you can think of them sort of the Pac-Man of your body. So they're there to eat up viruses, bacteria, parasites, whatever that is. And so there's a functional range and it should be between 5 and 7.5. So if you have a range where it's 8.5, then that usually means that there's some kind of active overgrowth or infection involved. Or even below a 5, then it could be 4 or 3.5, which may indicate, okay, you've got some kind of chronic sort of
Interesting.
issue that's going on for a long time. So if it's above or below the range, okay, maybe there's something going on. And so oftentimes in that case, then you would go into maybe stool testing. Or if you just outright have waterfall poop and constipated all the time, you may need to go straight into doing a stool assessment.
I just did a blood test and I had a low white blood cell count. Every time I do a blood test, I have that. My mom said it's genetic, but is there a way to fix that?
Well, in terms of maybe fixing it, sometimes they say yes, you might be genetically inclined to have a low white blood cell count.
Isn't that bad? That's bad, right?
It's
Well,
bad, yeah.
It's just means that something is causing it to be depressed.
But
So whether we know it or not, our body is always trying to fix things, create a homeostatic balance within the system, even within the immune system, the digestive system, hormonal system. So there could be something that could be driving that white blood cell count down. So that's where I say, look, we need to do some extensive blood work. I call it a functional blood panel. Let's look at maybe some hidden icebergs that could be causing that to be driven down.
right. And then going back
Right.
to the question earlier about improving gut health, what are some tips you recommend people?
Yeah, I mean,
Is
I would say,
sauerkraut? I heard sauerkraut. Was
yeah,
eating
I mean,
sauerkraut. on the first
sauerkraut
thing in the morning.
is one way to do that. So that goes along
What
the
kind of
lines of,
sauerkraut? Because I just went and bought some from Sprouts. And when I learned about it, I went and got some.
yeah, I mean, I would say obviously the organic sort of sauerkraut. If it's sitting on the, in a shelf, not refrigerated, it's probably not the good kind of sauerkraut we're
Okay,
looking at.
so the refrigerated kind.
Yeah, refrigerated kind. And typically, when we're looking at fermented foods like sauerkraut,
What does
I would
sauerkraut
say-
actually do?
well, it's technically it's fermented, right?
Yeah.
So you're getting bacteria to grow, and so it is a whole food probiotic. But it's also what we call a prebiotic because that's fiber in there, so that feeds your good gut flora. But also there's a concept called postbiotic. So that's where when you get probiotics into the system and they're fed fiber or a resistant starch, you name it, then they take that, they turn it into a fuel called short chain fatty acids. And that in itself is the fuel source for allowing the gut flora to flourish.
Oh.
So sauerkraut's one way to do
so
that.
Sauerkraut is really good then.
It can be, but for some people that
How much
have,
of it do you eat? Like what's the amount that you should eat daily? if you're
I mean,
doing
I say
sauerkraut?
start small. It could be just
A
one
spoonful?
spoonful, just to see how you react. Because sometimes for some people they may be sensitive.
On an empty stomach at night in the morning.
I would say
first
most
thing?
likely with food, just generally with your food.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Sauerkraut's so nasty.
I mean, it's but it's very acidic too, so
Yeah.
that kind of helps with the digestive process.
Try kimchi instead.
But
Is kimchi?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I-
fermented.
What's
that's
kimchi?
fermented.
It's like cabbage, right?
Cabbage.
It's basically
Same thing?
Napa cabbage, but
Okay.
with spices in it. So if you don't like spicy food, you don't handle
Yeah.
spicy food,
Yeah.
then that may not be such a
What about
good
kombucha?
option.
Is that good? Because I drink.
Kombucha is another source of a sort of whole food probiotic.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is that some people, for example, with SIBO, I'm sure you've heard of that, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, because they have the growth of the bacteria in the wrong place in the digestive tract, sometimes sauerkraut, kombucha, yogurts can actually exacerbate some of their
Ooh,
symptoms.
wow.
So that's when they go, oh, I tried sauerkraut, it's supposed to be the holy grail, and then I got bloated and I got gas and I'm farting. And that can be a sign that, okay, now that's sort of a clinical sign of, okay, now we need to do some testing to determine, okay, do you indeed have some kind of overgrowth that could be
Wow.
exacerbated by, a potentially very healthy gut food.
What do you say to people that think the organic stuff is all BS and it's just marketing?
I would say there's kind of a partial truth to that in the sense where you have obviously big conglomerates that want to get in that game because there's it's a huge market to make money. So in that sense, some of the organic, the USDA organic guidelines have sort of been watered down to a certain degree. So when you look at organic farming and you look at, okay, what should it be? It was biodynamic farming where you have rotation of crops, you have cows and chickens and goats and pigs all rotating through. And that was truly a biodynamic
And they can
farm.
still call it organic.
Well, that
still
is
consider it.
truly the sort of essence of an organic
That's what it's
farm.
supposed to be.
What it's
That's what it's
supposed to be. But oftentimes now they try to water down the terminology or definition
Well,
so that
because
they
it's a
can
trend.
they
All I
can
gotta do is
get
put the
that.
sticker on their meat.
Well, you could charge more.
Yeah, no.
Well, you can charge more. I would say, in terms of like we talked about meat earlier, when it says organic beef, for example, it doesn't mean it's grass-fed beef.
Okay.
So if it says organic beef, it just means that the cows were fed organic corn, grain, soy,
Got it.
that sort of thing. So you're still going to get a meat product that has probably high omega-6, lower omega-3s, higher arachidonic acid. So the meat quality is not going to be as good, even though it's technically organic.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Does lack of sleep affect gut health?
Ooh, that's a big one.
I think so.
I
Slow
just
down.
I'm working on a gut rest program, and so sleep is part of that solution, because what they've shown over time is that when you get a person that's sleep deprived, it does directly affect the diversity of the gut microbiome, but also reduces the number of the gut bacteria.
Wow.
So, sometimes you see when you really dive in and you take a deep dive into the literature, some will say, oh, well, there wasn't really that much of a change. And another one will say, oh, there was a massive change. And when you look at animal versus human studies, one of the interesting things that I found was that when they were studying the rats, it's it's cruel in a way, but they basically sleep deprive them by putting them on basically a sort of like rotating device,
Right.
so that when they start to fall asleep, they fall in the water.
Okay.
So that's their sort of, I guess, way to sleep deprive them.
Right.
Whereas within a human study, they're sleep depriving, but they're, watching a movie or they're playing video games or reading a book. So it's a very kind of nice environment.
Right.
So
It's not
obviously with that
Yeah.
particular human study, they didn't
Yeah.
really show that much change in the gut microbiome.
Okay.
But obviously most people that are in college, university, they're an attorney, they're preparing for some, a big event, they're highly stressed. They don't sleep that much. They don't eat very well because the other problem with sleep deprivation, it changes your what we call ghrelin and leptin. So that's sort of your yin and yang of
Right.
how you create satiety. So that's why all the medical or the pharmaceutical companies are trying to find that holy grail of leptin drugs and so forth to help with obesity. But what sleep has been shown to do, or sleep deprivation, it increases your ghrelin levels. So you get the munchies basically by being sleep deprived. And then
Interesting.
the problem with that is that it's a snowball effect, because the munchies are not organic beef and kale
Right.
and broccoli.
Yeah.
It's starchy, processed
Chips.
sugar, chips,
Yeah.
crackers, Snickers, you name it.
Can
Yeah.
fasting help
then-
with improving gut health?
It's a really good question. There is some of the literature coming out that the fasting does change some of the gut microbiome.
And how much fasting? Like how long?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because typically it's sort of the 16-8, right? So you fast for 16
Intermittent,
hours,
yeah.
intermittent fasting, or people are stuck on words, time restricted eating. I view it as a tool, the whole intermittent fasting. So you have to use the tool properly in the situation given. And so sometimes when I'm working with someone with a gut issue, intermittent fasting is not the way to go, because they get moody, they get hangry, they get emotional when they are fasting. And then also what ends up happening is, because they don't eat enough calories during the day, they get the munchies at night, they overeat, they don't eat enough protein. And so that creates a whole another issue of problems
Right.
over time. So I think a person who has very good eating habits to begin with, I think maybe intermittent fasting could be helpful.
Right.
But you have to be careful. It's kind
That
of a
makes
fine
sense.
line.
People
Yeah.
that are struggling to lose weight, is that usually due to a gut issue?
I would say yes and no. It depends on who the person is.
Right.
So, for example, they've done some rat studies and human studies where they actually take a skinny person, take their poop and give it in a capsule, basically, into a fat person, and they actually lose weight.
What?
Wait,
Yeah. Or they've done it in rat studies as well.
Whoa.
they take the feces of a skinny person
Yeah. Say
and
they
put it in a capsule
fecal-
and shoot it up, or they
Well, basically they put it in micro encapsulations, or sometimes they might actually, yes, shoot up the butt of the person.
and that
Wow.
person that's obese or overweight starts
They
losing weight.
end up losing weight.
Wow.
But now, like, that we're also context, right? So we're looking at, okay, someone who's obese versus someone who's relatively or
Small.
not
Yeah,
overweight.
yeah.
So I say it depends who the person is, because obviously someone who's, I don't know, preparing for a bodybuilding show, is that going to really help them? No. I mean, at that point, you're looking at macros and carbs and proteins and, exercise and supplements and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where some of the research is going towards. But I don't think it's ever going to defeat obviously good sleep patterns, good eating, hydrating, controlling your stress, because that's obviously a big factor.
So
in
stress
someone's
impacts your
health.
gut.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah,
So,
for sure. Slow it down, right?
I'm sorry.
Stress can slow down your digestion.
Well, it can either slow it down or speed it up. So, for example, they've shown when you have high stress level, you have elevated cortisol, but probably noradrenaline as well. And they've showed that that feeds the gram-negative bacteria in your intestinal tract. So when you get highly stressed, you could potentially basically push that overgrowth within your intestinal tract. And then we're talking about obviously elevation of cortisol. And so typically as the cortisol levels goes up, it's not a bad thing. It's just to help you to get away from the tiger, so to speak.
Gotcha.
Right. But if you chronically have high cortisol levels, what that's been shown to do is drop what we call secretory IgA. So it's technically, we say it's their first line of defense of your immune system, sort of like the Coast Guard line, protecting the coast of California or whatever that is. So if you have high stress all the time, it depresses your SIG-A, and then your first line of defense is no longer there. Now you're predisposing yourself to fungal, bacterial, parasitic overgrowth over time.
Wow.
So that's sort of like the indirect path of how high stress, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, can affect your gut health.
That's crazy.
So there's that. It's always a hand where whenever I lecture, I say, look, gut health is like octopus tentacles. An octopus can touch 8 different things at once, and the gut can affect your gut brain axis, gut skin axis, gut liver axis, gut kidney axis. So it has its hand in everything. And it's not to say that it's the end all be all for everything. Sometimes even with someone with gut issues, I have to address their blood sugar, because their blood sugar is all over the place based on their lab work. I'm like, look, we're not going to ever get your gut under control unless we start to stabilize your blood sugar.
Right.
So sometimes it's like, okay, we're not even doing stool testing, or we're not going to do, hormone testing. We just, let's get your blood sugar sorted out.
What drinks are a complete no to you? Like, I'm not drinking that because it affects the gut in this way. Or
I know people are going to hate me, but
Oh god.
say it. Run it up.
alcohol, it's alcohol, baby.
Alcohol. All
Alcohol's-
alcohols.
I thought that was liver.
Well, so it can be liver, right? So we have like a fatty liver
Yeah.
that people talk about.
Fatty liver is bad, actually, right?
So yeah, so that's bad. So you have, obviously people know about, if you drink too much alcohol, you get a fatty liver.
yeah.
You can have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So sometimes you find that with people that just, I don't know, they drink like 2 liters of soda every day, right? High fructose corn syrup, too high sugar. But with alcohol, one, you create a pseudo-like leaky gut, which I'm sure you've heard of.
It's called what?
Leaky gut.
Leaky gut.
Leaky
Yeah.
gut, yeah.
I haven't heard of it.
Yeah. So quick explanation. If you think about digestion from north to south, food goes to your mouth, esophagus, goes to your stomach. Oops, excuse me. Stomach is a big cement mixer. So that mixes everything up, acid, and then it goes in your small intestine. So that small intestine, there's what we call tight junctions. So it's sort of like the riot police protecting the target store. And so the target store is the bloodstream. So that's very, very, very important territory, obviously. So if the riot police gets irritated or they throw a cocktail bomb, boom, blows up. So instead of the tight junctions being very close together, they open up, and that's what we call leaky gut.
Okay.
So there's a researcher.
And so what happens when the gut is leaky?
So basically what happens, Alessio Fasano, he's a researcher and figured out what causes leaky gut.
Yeah.
And he said, what happens in Vegas should stay in Vegas. And that's kind of how what the small intestine should be like. Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens in the small intestine should stay in the small intestine. So when you have irritation to the intestinal tract, that causes leaky gut. That goes straight into the bloodstream. Immune system, body goes, what the heck? That shouldn't be in the bloodstream. So now you have alarms, bells, whistles, red lights, blue lights going on, go, whoa, 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 that's it. And you're artificially activating the immune system, which shouldn't be activated in those situations.
But what are you?
And leaky gut basically causes them to open up.
So what are you
I'm sorry,
intoxicating?
leaky gut, alcohol. Sorry.
Are you intoxicating your blood with alcohol, or is it the feces?
No,
that's in-
when you drink alcohol, it goes in your stomach, goes in your small intestine, and that irritates the small intestine and opens it up.
Gotcha.
And then you eat your organic broccoli or beef or chicken, and
And it
then
makes
that
it worse.
potentially go in and makes it worse.
Oh,
Yeah, we don't drink, so
yeah,
So-
yeah.
we're
I'm
good
not
on that one.
guy.
And then we didn't even talk about the blood sugar effects, hormonal effects, sleep effects, because that
Right. That
snowballs
just
into that as
magnifies it.
well.
What about food wise? What foods are bad?
I would say probably obviously trans fats are pretty
So what
inflammatory.
foods have that?
So any fried food.
Fried food.
So
French
fried food in
fries?
general, French fries,
I eat a lot
fried
of French-
chicken.
I like French fries.
You got to cut
You
those
know,
out.
I know. That's why I went to Teriyaki Madness, but y'all said it was
That's not much better.
Well, you got the sugar, right?
right. But if I order the bowl without teriyaki, am I good?
Then it's a much better choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no teriyaki.
but it
then.
still has seed oils.
Yeah. So that's why Sean's like, it's still got seed oils.
See, he's
you know?
always gonna say something.
So-
It's like, dude, that's cooked in that. You got 2
He's
weeks
looking
left.
out for you.
Yeah, nah. Sean just like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
So what were you saying?
So, foods that are bad for your gut. So obviously fried food, trans fatty acids
Right.
are going to be one of them. Sugar's going to be another one because that's very
So
irritating
no
to your
sugar.
testosterone. If you can, or very
Little
seldom
sugar.
What if it's
Okay.
fruit? Fruit
Yeah.
sugar.
fruit sugar?
Because sugar's in everything,
because
right?
with fruit sugar, obviously you're having the fiber content,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also phytonutrients. So what we're finding is that some of the phytonutrients in fruits and vegetables, they're continually finding new phytonutrients that are very helpful for the gut microbiome. So, we're talking about obviously table sugar and things like soda and soft drinks.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
you
How
know,
often do
those
you
kinds
eat
of
sugar?
things.
Do you even touch sugar?
No, I do touch sugar. Like I'll have it on the weekends.
Okay.
Like
know.
what? What's your
Like for
drug
me,
of choice?
I would say it's ice cream.
Ice
Oh,
cream.
okay.
But I stay within a parameter avoiding dairy
Oh, okay. So it's
because I
gluten
don't do
free.
well.
It's all that.
It'll be gluten free, dairy free. It'll be like coconut.
Oh,
or-
okay.
Have you
cashew
tried the
nut.
avocado one?
I haven't tried that one. I'm
Yeah.
kind of scared to because I'm like, oh, avocado. Do you like it?
I like it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll have to give that one a try.
So you do indulge, but just a little bit.
Yeah, I indulge. Yeah, and that's why I tell people, look, it doesn't have to be perfect all the time.
Okay.
80-20
Just
rule.
don't, or just not all the time.
Just not all the
Yeah,
time.
got you.
You
So
got to live your
sometimes-
life a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So-
Well, man, it's been a pleasure. I could talk to
Yeah,
you for
man.
hours.
Yeah, I kind of want to keep going.
Yeah, I wish we could. Any closing comments where people can find out more about you?
Yeah, you can find me Robert Yang on Instagram, also robertyang.net, the website. So if anybody needs help and they're just struggling with gut health issues, hormonal balances, I try to help people the best way I can.
Amazing. Wayne,
You can follow me on Instagram @thecreator.
Sean Kelly, Digital Social Hour. Thanks for tuning in. See you guys next week.